In a modest workshop on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, where dreams collect dust alongside scattered tools and spare parts, Marcus Chen spends his evenings tinkering with discarded hearing aids. By day, he's a handyman, a delivery driver, a part-time mechanic, whatever it takes to provide for his daughter. But tonight is different. Tonight, his latest modified device might change a young boy's life forever. For months, he's watched. 8-year-old Tommy, born completely deaf, trapped in a silent world. Using salvaged electronics and pure determination, Marcus believes he's created something extraordinary. A revolutionary ear device that could finally help Tommy hear his own voice for the first time. But neither Marcus nor Tommy could imagine that tomorrow a sleek helicopter would land in their neighborhood, carrying someone who will transform both their lives forever. Could this struggling single dad's invention be the miracle that bridges the world of silence and sound? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Chen's alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., an hour when even Silicon Valley's most dedicated programmers were still dreaming of their next big break. His calloused fingers fumbled for the switch, careful not to wake Lisa sleeping in the next room. The worn notebook on his nightstand held his day's schedule, each hour meticulously planned to maximize income while minimizing time away from his daughter. "Coffee first," he mumbled, shuffling through their modest two-bedroom apartment. The morning light hadn't yet touched the small workshop he'd built in their converted garage, but his mind was already there, dwelling on the circuit board modifications he'd been working on until midnight. The kitchen counter held Lisa's homework from last night. Straight A's in science again. Pride swelled in his chest as he traced her neat handwriting with his finger. At 12, she was already showing the same technical aptitude that had earned him his engineering degree before life took an unexpected turn. His phone buzzed, a reminder for his first job of the day. Marcus grabbed his thermos and tool belt, pausing at Lisa's door. "Rise and shine, circuit board," he whispered, using the nickname she'd earned for her fascination with his work. Lisa stirred, her dark hair peeking out from under her favorite NASA-themed comforter. "5 more minutes, Dad?" "Sorry, kiddo. Mrs. Peterson's sink won't fix itself, and then I've got that delivery route for the electronics store." He smiled, remembering how she'd convinced him to take that particular job for the employee discount on parts. "Remember, Aunt Jenny's picking you up for school today." Lisa sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Can I help in the workshop tonight? I've got some ideas for the hearing aid project." Marcus hesitated. The prototype was still dangerous, exposed. Wires, unstable power supply, but her eyes held that familiar determination. "Tell you what," he said, "homework first, then you can help me organize the components. Deal?" "Deal!" She grinned, already more awake. "Dad, I saw Tommy watching you work yesterday." Through the fence again, Marcus nodded, his expression softening. The silent boy next door had become a regular presence, though he never came closer than the chain-link fence separating their yards. Something about Tommy's longing gaze reminded Marcus of himself at that age, fascinated by technology, desperate to understand how things worked. "His grandmother caught me sketching designs," Lisa continued, pulling on her favorite science camp hoodie. "She asked what you were building. What did you tell her?" "That my dad fixes things. That's what you do, right?" Marcus swallowed hard, thinking of the hearing aid components scattered across his workbench. "Yeah, that's what I do. But this one's different circuit board. This one could change everything." The morning passed in a blur of leaky pipes, circuit boards, and delivery signatures. Between jobs, Marcus's mind kept drifting to his workshop, to the breakthrough he'd almost achieved last night. The modified hearing aid design was unlike anything on the market, if he could just solve the feedback issue. During his lunch break, parked in his delivery van, he pulled out his notebook. Among the job listings and payment schedules was a page of calculations and diagrams. His engineering degree might be gathering dust, but the knowledge was still there, waiting to be used for something meaningful. A text from Lisa brightened his afternoon. Tommy smiled at me today. First time ever. He was pointing at our workshop. Marcus smiled, remembering Tommy's face pressed against the fence yesterday, watching him work through the garage's open door. The boy's eyes had held such hope, such curiosity. It was the same look Lisa got when discovering how something worked for the first time. His last delivery of the day was to a high-end electronics store in Palo Alto. While the manager signed for the packages, Marcus found himself staring at the sleek hearing aids in the display case, $5,000 each, more than 3 months of his combined income. Beautiful pieces, the manager commented following his gaze. Latest technology. Marcus nodded, thinking of his own cobbled-together prototype. Beautiful, he agreed, but out of reach for most people. The drive home was slow, Silicon Valley traffic giving him time to think. His modified design could be made for a fraction of the cost, using repurposed components and innovative circuitry. If it worked for Tommy, maybe it could work for others. Maybe he pushed the thought away, one step at a time. First, make it work, then worry about changing the world. Tommy pressed his hand against the chain-link fence, feeling the vibrations of the evening through his fingertips. The workshop's lights cast long shadows across the yard, and even though he couldn't hear the sounds of their work, he could imagine them. His grandmother had tried explaining sound to him once, like feeling the rumble of a truck passing by, but in your ears instead of your hands. The girl, Lisa, had noticed him again today at school. She'd waved, trying to teach him the sign for hello, though she didn't know many signs yet. Tommy appreciated the effort. Most kids didn't bother trying to communicate at all. They just stared, or worse, pretended he didn't exist. In his pocket, he fingered the folded piece of paper he'd been working on during art class. The drawing showed a boy, himself, with waves coming from his ears, like the ones in his science textbook. About sound, his teacher had praised the technical detail, but how could he explain what he really wanted to show? The dream of hearing his grandmother's voice, of knowing what laughter felt like beyond the vibrations in his chest. Mrs. Chen, his grandmother's neighbor for the past year, appeared at the back door. Even in the dimming light, Tommy could see the concern in her weathered face. She gestured for him to come home. Dinner time. He lingered for a moment, watching Mr. Chen adjust something tiny under a bright lamp. At home, his grandmother was waiting with a gentle smile. "Again by the workshop?" she signed, her movements familiar and comforting. Tommy nodded, pulling out his drawing to show her. Her eyes softened as she studied it, understanding flooding her features. "Marcus Chen is a good man," she signed, speaking aloud as she always did while signing, a habit from years of teaching him to read lips. "He fixes things others throw away." She paused, her hands hesitating before continuing. "But some things can't be fixed so easily, little one." Tommy shook his head firmly, reaching for the worn notepad they kept on the kitchen counter. His writing was careful, deliberate. "He makes things better. I saw him turn broken things into working things." His grandmother sat beside him at their small kitchen table, the evening light painting shadows across her face. She'd raised him since he was 2, after the accident that took his parents. The same accident that the doctors believed had damaged his hearing beyond repair. The expensive hearing aids they'd tried had never worked. His nerve damage was too severe, they said. "I know you want to hear," she signed, her movements gentle, "but I don't want you to be disappointed. Sometimes—" She stopped as Tommy slid the drawing closer to her. He'd added something to it since she'd last seen his artwork. Below the waves coming from the ears, he'd drawn Mr. Chen's workshop, detailed down to the tools on the wall. And in the window a light glowed, not yellow like a normal bulb, but blue like hope. His grandmother stared at the drawing for a long time. Finally, she signed, "You really believe he can help?" Tommy nodded emphatically. He'd seen something different in Mr. Chen's workshop. Not the sterile medical offices with their expensive equipment, or the specialists with their pitying looks. Mr. Chen worked with his hands and his heart, Tommy could see it in the way he handled each broken piece, treating it not as trash, but as potential. Later that night, after his grandmother thought he was asleep, Tommy crept to his window. The workshop lights were still on. Through his binoculars, a gift from his grandmother to encourage his interest in birds, he could see Mr. Chen working. Alone now. The man's face was screwed up in concentration as he held something small up to the light. Tommy pressed his hand against the cool window glass, feeling the slight vibrations of the night. One day, he thought, those vibrations would become sound. Mr. Chen would find a way. He had to believe that. The box had been marked as defective returns, destined for recycling. But Marcus's trained eye caught something special among the discarded electronics. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted out an old Hearing Assist Pro 3000, still in its original packaging with the manual intact. This particular model had been discontinued years ago, notorious for its power consumption issues, but its sound clarity had been legendary among audiologists. Just another piece of junk for recycling? His supervisor asked, passing by with a clipboard. Something like that, Marcus murmured, already thumbing through the manual's dense technical specifications. The lunch hour found him in his delivery van, poring over the documentation. The frequency response curves, the amplification matrices, the neural processing pathways. It was all there, a goldmine of information that most people would overlook. Back in his workshop that evening, Marcus spread the manual across his workbench like a treasure map. The hearing aid itself lay dissected under his magnifying lamp, its components carefully arranged on a static-free mat. The original design was brilliant but flawed. It tried to do too much, burning through batteries in hours. "Dad?" Lisa's voice startled him from his concentration. "You didn't eat your dinner again." He looked up to find his daughter holding a plate of reheated pasta, concern in her eyes. "Sorry, circuit board. I got caught up in this." He gestured to the dismantled device. "Come look at something interesting." Lisa set down the plate and peered through the magnifying lamp. "Is that the fancy one from the electronics store? The expensive kind? Returns bin. They said it was dead." Marcus smiled, pointing to the power management circuit. "But look here. See how they tried to solve the power problem? They just made the battery bigger?" Lisa frowned, studying the component layout. "Exactly. Brute force solution. But we're going to be smarter." He pulled out a small chip he'd salvaged from a smart home device last week. "What if we could make it learn? Like how your brain learns to focus on one voice in a noisy room." Lisa's eyes lit up. "Adaptive filtering. Like in your old engineering textbook." "You've been reading my textbooks again?" Marcus grinned, pride warming his chest. "But yes, exactly that. This chip is designed for voice recognition, but with some reprogramming." A soft thud interrupted them. They looked up to find Tommy standing outside the workshop window, closer than they'd ever seen him before. In his hand was the drawing they'd glimpsed him working on at school. Marcus made a decision. "Lisa, can you get your tablet? The one with the sign language app?" When Lisa returned, Marcus opened the workshop door, gesturing for Tommy to come. The boy hesitated, looking back toward his house, then took a tentative step forward. His eyes widened as he took in the organized chaos of the workshop, but they locked onto the dismantled hearing aid with laser focus. Marcus picked up the neural processing chip, holding it out for Tommy to see. The boy reached for it carefully, cradling it in his palm like it was made of gold. "That," Marcus said clearly, making sure Tommy could see his lips, "is going to help you hear." Tommy's free hand went to his throat, then his ear, the sign for hear. His eyes filled with questions. Lisa had been studying her tablet intently. Carefully she signed, "My dad fixes things, makes them better." Tommy pulled out his drawing, smoothing it on the workbench. Next to it, he placed the chip. The message was clear. "This is what I've been waiting for." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Until now, the project had been theoretical, an engineering challenge, a puzzle to solve. But looking at Tommy's drawing, seeing the hope in the boy's eyes, it became real. This wasn't just about fixing a broken device anymore. It was about building a bridge between silence and sound, between isolation and connection. He picked up his notebook, flipping to a fresh page. "Let's do this right," he said, gesturing for both children to pull up stools. "Tommy, you're going to help us design this. You know better than anyone what you need." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus's design sketches evolved from rough ideas to precise technical diagrams. Each page in his notebook told a story, initial concepts giving way to detailed circuit layouts, power consumption calculations, and component specifications. In the margins, Lisa had added her own notes, and Tommy had contributed drawings showing exactly where the device felt uncomfortable or needed adjustment. The neural network chip proved to be both their greatest challenge and their biggest breakthrough. "The problem isn't just amplification," Marcus explained one evening, sketching a new diagram while Tommy watched intently. "We need to create clear sound patterns that your brain can learn to interpret." Lisa, her sign language improving daily, translated the key points. Tommy would correct her gestures occasionally, and soon they developed their own hybrid form of communication, a mixture of signs, lip reading, and technical drawings that bridged their worlds. "See here?" Marcus pointed to a particular circuit. "The path. This is where we'll process the sound waves differently. Instead of just making everything louder, we're teaching the device to focus on the frequencies you might be able to sense." Tommy's grandmother, Mrs. Wu, had started bringing them dinner during their longer workshop sessions. At first, she'd watched from the doorway with worried eyes, but seeing Tommy's growing excitement, his enthusiasm for learning about circuits and sound waves, gradually softened her concern. "He hasn't drawn anything but circuit diagrams for days," she told Marcus one evening, helping Lisa clean up their dinner plates. "Even his teachers have noticed the change. He's more engaged." Marcus looked up from his workbench, where Tommy was carefully sorting tiny capacitors by value. "He has an engineer's mind," he said. "The way he thinks about problems, it's remarkable." "But what if—" Mrs. Wu hesitated, her hands tightening on the plates. "What if it doesn't work? He's had so many disappointments already." Marcus set down his soldering iron. "Mrs. Wu, I can't promise this will work perfectly, but I can promise we won't give up until we've tried everything possible." That night, after Tommy and his grandmother had gone home, Lisa found her father, still at the workbench, staring at their latest design sketch. "Dad, are you worried too?" Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. "Not about the technical aspects, those we can solve. I'm worried about raising his hopes too high." He picked up the prototype, still rough-looking, with exposed circuits and temporary wiring. "This isn't like the sleek ones in the stores." "But those didn't work for him," Lisa pointed out, "and they didn't have you building them." The breakthrough came 3 days later, at 2 a.m. Marcus had been wrestling with the power management system, trying to balance battery life with processing power. The solution hit him while dozing over his coffee. They didn't need to process all frequencies continuously. By analyzing Tommy's audiogram, which Mrs. Wu had shared from his last medical test, they could focus the device's energy on only the most crucial sound ranges. "It's like having a smart filter," he explained to his bleary-eyed daughter at breakfast. "Instead of trying to amplify everything, we're creating a personalized sound profile just for Tommy." Lisa blinked at him over her cereal. "Is that why you were yelling, 'That's it,' in the middle of the night?" "Sorry about that," he grinned, already reaching for his notebook to sketch the modifications. The pages were a testament to their journey, each diagram more refined, each calculation bringing them closer to their goal. That afternoon, Tommy arrived to find the workshop transformed. Marcus had cleared the main workbench, setting up precision testing equipment borrowed from his electronics. "Store job." The prototype, now housed in a 3D printed case Lisa had designed, sat ready for its first full trial. "Now remember," Marcus signed carefully with Lisa helping, "this is just a test. We'll need to make adjustments." He demonstrated how to position the device behind Tommy's ear, explaining each component's function. Tommy nodded, but his hands were trembling slightly as he reached for the device. 3 weeks of work, of hope, of believing in possibilities, all condensed into this moment. Mrs. Wu appeared in the doorway, drawn by the workshop's unusual quiet. She watched as Marcus made final adjustments to the settings. Her hand pressed against her heart. "Ready?" Marcus asked, making sure Tommy could see his lips. Tommy took a deep breath and nodded. His fingers found the power switch, hesitated for just a moment, then pressed. The first prototype sat behind Tommy's ear, its exposed circuits protected by Lisa's carefully designed casing. Marcus held his breath as Tommy's finger pressed the power switch. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Tommy's expression remained unchanged, his eyes fixed on some distant point. Then his whole body stiffened. "Tommy!" Marcus signed, worry creeping into his movements. "Are you okay?" Tommy's hand shot up to the device, not to remove it, but to touch it, to confirm it was real. His eyes widened, and his mouth formed a perfect... Oh, tears began rolling down his cheeks. "What is it?" Mrs. Wu rushed forward, but Marcus gently held up his hand. "Wait," he said softly. "Give him a moment." Tommy was turning his head slowly, like a radar dish seeking signals. His free hand reached out and found the edge of the workbench. He tapped it once, then again. His eyes grew even wider. Lisa understood. "First, Dad," she whispered. "He's hearing the tapping." Marcus knelt in front of Tommy, making sure the boy could still see his face. "Tommy, if you can hear anything, any sound at all, could you nod?" The nod was slight at first, then more, vigorous. Tommy's hand never left the device, as if afraid it might disappear. Tears continued streaming down his face, but now there was a smile too, small and wondering. Mrs. Wu sank into the nearest chair, her own eyes glistening. "It works," she signed. "He can hear?" Marcus kept his voice calm, professional, even as his heart raced. "It's working, but we need to test exactly what he's hearing. Tommy, I'm going to make some different sounds. Try to point to where they're coming from, okay?" For the next hour, they tested the device methodically. Marcus had prepared a series of simple sounds, finger snaps, hand claps, different tonal frequencies played through a small speaker. Tommy's accuracy in pointing to sound sources improved with each test. He was learning, adapting, his brain beginning to map this new sensory input. "The neural network is helping him process the sounds," Marcus explained to Mrs. Wu. "It's not imperfect hearing, not like what you and I experience, but it's creating patterns his brain can understand." Lisa, who had been taking careful notes of each test, suddenly had an idea. She pulled out her phone and opened a video she'd taken last week. "Tommy," she signed, "this is from your grandmother's garden." The phone's speaker played back the sound of wind chimes, the ones that hung outside Tommy's window, the ones he'd only ever felt vibrating in the breeze. Tommy's hand flew to his mouth as he recognized the source of this new sensation. He turned to his grandmother, signing rapidly. "The bells," Mrs. Wu translated aloud, her voice breaking. "He says he can hear the bells." Marcus checked the devices. Readings on his laptop. Everything looked stable. Power consumption was within expected parameters. The neural network was adapting as designed. But the technical details seemed less important now, overshadowed by the human miracle unfolding in his workshop. Tommy tugged at his sleeve, then pointed to his own throat. It took Marcus a moment to understand. "You want to try speaking?" Tommy nodded eagerly. "Now remember," Marcus signed carefully, "this will take time and practice. You've never heard your own voice before, so it might sound strange at first." Tommy took a deep breath. His first attempt was barely a whisper, but it was there, a small ah sound. His eyes lit up at the sensation of hearing his own voice. Mrs. Wu could contain herself no longer. She rushed forward, enveloping Tommy in a hug. "My brave boy," she said through tears, speaking and signing together as always. "My clever, brave boy." Marcus felt Lisa's hand slip into his. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We did," he agreed. watching Tommy explore this new world of sound. But this is just the beginning. We'll need to refine it, make it better, more reliable. Tommy was still making small sounds, testing different vowels, his face a picture of concentration and wonder. Each success brought a new smile. Each smile sparked another tear of joy. A small crowd had gathered at the workshop door, neighbors drawn by the unusual activity. Someone started clapping, and Tommy's head snapped around, tracking the new sound. His smile grew even wider as he pointed to the source, proud of his newfound ability. Marcus squeezed Lisa's hand, his engineer's mind already working on improvements, refinements, ways to make the device smaller and more efficient. But for now, he simply watched as Tommy discovered a world he'd never known, one sound at a time. Mrs. Peterson from next door had been recording on her phone. "My grandson's deaf too," she explained later, wiping tears from her eyes as she showed them the video. I had to share this moment." The clip was beautifully simple. Tommy, hearing the wind chimes, his face transforming with wonder, then making his first sounds. Within hours, it had spread through the neighborhood's social media groups. By morning, it had gone far beyond their small corner of Silicon Valley. Marcus discovered this when he arrived at his first handyman job of the day. His elderly client was watching the video on her tablet, tissues scattered around her breakfast table. "Is this you?" she asked, turning the screen to show him. "My daughter sent it from Boston. She said it's all over her feed." The view counter was already in the hundreds of thousands. Comments poured in from around the world, many from families with deaf children. "Where can we get this device?" they asked. "How much does it cost? Please, we need this." Lisa called during his lunch break. "Dad, Tommy's trending." Silence to sound is everywhere. And people are sharing their own stories too. Marcus sat in his delivery van, watching the video spread. He saw it reposted by deaf advocacy groups, medical technology forums, and even a few celebrities. Each share brought more attention, more questions, more hope from families facing similar challenges. The local news van arrived that afternoon. "We've been getting calls all day," the reporter explained, setting up equipment in the workshop. "People want to know more about the man who built a miracle in his garage." Tommy and his grandmother agreed to be interviewed. The boy was still discovering new sounds, still adjusting to this changed world, but his joy was infectious. He demonstrated how the device worked, carefully explaining through sign language while the reporter's camera captured every moment. "And you built this from recycled parts?" the reporter asked Marcus, gesturing to his workbench full of salvaged electronics. "Most of it," Marcus admitted. "The neural network chip was key. It helps process the sound in a way Tommy's brain can understand. But yes, the basic components were all things people had thrown away." The story aired on the evening news. Silicon Valley handyman creates revolutionary hearing device. Within minutes, Marcus's phone began ringing. Medical device companies, investors, research institutions, all wanting to know more about his invention. "Dad?" Lisa found him in the workshop later, staring at his phone as messages continued pouring in. "Are you okay?" "Just overwhelmed," he admitted. "I built this for Tommy. I never thought about what would happen if it worked." A new email notification popped up. This one was different. From the CEO of Walsh Technologies, one of the largest medical device companies in the world. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting request, life-changing innovation." "They want to meet tomorrow," Marcus said, scanning the email. "They're sending a helicopter." Lisa's eyes widened. "A helicopter? Here?" Apparently the CEO has a personal interest in hearing aid technology. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, suddenly aware of his worn work clothes and the grease under his fingernails. "What am I going to do?" "Show them what you showed Tommy," Lisa said simply. "Show them how to help people without charging a fortune." Through the workshop window, they could see Tommy in his backyard, moving from object to object, discovering the sound each one made. He'd found his grandmother's wind chimes again, gently touching each one, matching the physical sensation with the new auditory input. Mrs. Wu appeared beside him carrying a small radio. They watched as she turned it on, and Tommy's face lit up with fresh wonder. Music. He was hearing music for the first time. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another message, another request, another story being shared. The video had passed 1 million views. Silence to Sound was trending nationally. Tomorrow, a helicopter would land in their neighborhood, carrying someone who could potentially change everything. But for now, Marcus simply watched Tommy discovering music, remembering why he'd started this project in the first place. The boy swayed slightly, feeling the rhythm in both his body and his ears, his grandmother crying quiet tears beside him. "We should document everything," Lisa said, already reaching for her tablet. "All the designs, all the components. People need to know this is possible." Marcus nodded, turning back to his workbench. There was still so much to improve, so much to refine. But now, with the world watching, maybe they could help more than just one boy hear the sound of wind chimes for the first time. The helicopter's approach drew everyone outdoors. Local news crews had stationed themselves along the street since dawn, their cameras tracking the black dot growing larger against the morning sky. The sleek Walsh Technologies logo gleamed on. The craft sighed as it circled once, looking for a landing spot. "Did you know they were sending a news crew?" Marcus asked Mrs. Wu, watching a cameraman set up near his driveway. "They're not with Walsh Technologies," she said quietly. Her hands were trembling slightly. "They're following the story." The helicopter settled onto the empty lot at the end of their street, its rotors stirring up small clouds of dust. A tall woman in an impeccable business suit stepped out, her dark hair barely ruffled by the wind. But it was her face that caught Marcus's attention, something hauntingly familiar in her features. Tommy had come outside too, the prototype device visible behind his ear. When he saw the woman, he froze. His grandmother's hand tightened on his shoulder. The woman walked toward them with practiced grace, but her composure cracked when she saw Tommy. She stopped a few feet away, her hand going to her throat. "Hello, Thomas," she said, speaking and signing simultaneously with fluid expertise. "I'm Catherine Walsh, and—" Her voice caught slightly. "I'm your mother." The news cameras whirred. Marcus felt Lisa grab his hand in shock. Tommy just stared, his eyes moving between Catherine and his grandmother. "Perhaps," Mrs. Wu said carefully, "we should continue this inside." They gathered in the Wu's living room, the news crews held at bay outside. Catherine sat perched on the edge of the sofa, her eyes never leaving Tommy. "I've been following his progress since he was born," she said. "Every medical report, every specialist's evaluation. When I saw the video yesterday," she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, what you've created, it's what I've been searching for all these years." "You're Tommy's mother," Lisa blurted out. "But why—" "Lisa," Marcus warned gently, but Catherine held up a hand. "No, she deserves to know. They all do." She looked at Tommy, who was watching her intently. "I was young when Thomas was born, just starting Walsh Technologies. His father left when we learned about the hearing loss. I thought I could fix everything, pour millions into research, develop the perfect device. But nothing worked." Mrs. Wu's voice was steady. "And sending him to live with me? You were the only one who could teach him what he really needed to learn. While I was focused on finding a technological solution, you taught him to live, to communicate, to be the amazing boy he is." Catherine's composure cracked again. I thought I was doing the right thing, focusing on developing technology that could help him and others like him. But watching that video, seeing him here for the first time," she wiped away a tear. "Someone in a garage with salvaged parts did what all my company's millions couldn't do." Tommy had been silent throughout this exchange, his eyes moving between his mother and grandmother. Now he pulled out his ever-present notepad and wrote something, showing it to both women. "He wants to know if this means he has to choose," Mrs. Wu translated aloud. Catherine shook her head quickly. No, never. I'm not here to disrupt your life, Thomas. I'm here because Mr. Chen's invention could help thousands of children like you. And maybe, she hesitated, maybe I could be part of your life too, if you want. Tommy considered this, then wrote something else. He wants to know if you'll help make the device better, Mrs. Wu read. He says it sometimes makes strange noises when he's near computers. Catherine laughed through her tears. Yes, we can definitely help with that. Mr. Chen, she turned to Marcus, what you've created is revolutionary. The neural network adaptation, the personalized frequency mapping, it's brilliant. With proper development and testing, this could change countless lives. Marcus thought about all the comments on the viral video, all the families hoping for their own miracle. That was the idea, he said quietly, to make something that actually helps people, not just looks impressive in a display case. The news helicopter was still circling overhead, its distant thrum now audible to Tommy through his device. He smiled at the sound, then wrote one more note. Mrs. Wu read it and smiled. He says he wants to stay here, with his homework and his friends and his grandmother. But he would like to spend time in a real engineering lab too. And, she paused, looking at Catherine, he wants to get to know his mother. Catherine's smile was radiant. I think we can arrange all of that. Mr. Chen, would you be interested in heading up a new research division at Walsh Technologies? We could provide resources, testing facilities, everything needed to develop this further. Outside, cameras flashed, as reporters tried to piece together why the CEO of Walsh Technologies had landed in this modest neighborhood. Inside, a family was slowly, carefully beginning to heal. Catherine's business card sat on Marcus's workbench, its elegant embossing catching the shop light. Catherine Walsh, CEO, Walsh Technologies. The corporate logo gleamed in metallic ink, a stark contrast to the scattered tools and salvaged electronics surrounding it. It's a lot to process, Marcus said, watching Tommy examine his mother's card through his magnifying lamp. The boy had been quiet, more so than usual, since the revelation, spending extra time in the workshop as if seeking comfort in its familiar chaos. Catherine had stepped out to handle the press, her practiced corporate voice drifting through the window as she gave carefully worded statements about exciting technological breakthroughs and family reunions. But here in the workshop, the human story was still unfolding. Did you know? Marcus asked Mrs. Wu, who had been organizing components with an intensity that suggested she needed the distraction. That she was the Catherine Walsh? No, she paused, holding a circuit board. She was just Catherine Zhang back then, a brilliant graduate student with too many dreams and not enough time. When Tommy was born, she sighed, sometimes the hardest choices come from the best intentions. Tommy tapped the workbench to get their attention, then wrote in his notebook, She built a whole company to try to help me here. Yes, Mrs. Wu signed and spoke simultaneously. She wanted to give you everything. She just took a different path to get there. The workshop door opened and Catherine returned, looking slightly less polished than before. She'd removed her blazer and her perfect hair was showing signs of stress. In her hands, she held a tablet displaying technical specifications that made Marcus's eyes widen. I hope you don't mind, she said, but I had our engineers look at the video. The way you've implemented the neural network processing is fascinating. We've been approaching it all wrong at Walsh Technologies. She placed the tablet next to her business card, creating an odd juxtaposition of corporate polish and garage innovation. We focused on amplification and clarity, trying to make the perfect sound. But you, she smiled at Marcus, you focused on teaching the device to learn from each individual user. Tommy picked up the tablet, studying the complex diagrams with the same intensity he'd shown for Marcus's sketches. He pointed to one section, then made a series of quick signs. He says there's interference when he's near LED lights, Mrs. Wu translated. He's been mapping out which frequencies cause problems. Catherine's eyes lit up. "You're documenting the interference patterns. May I see?" For the next hour, the workshop became a curious blend of worlds. Tommy showed Catherine his detailed notes on the device's performance, complete with drawings and timestamps. Catherine contributed insights from years of research, while Marcus explained how he'd worked around various limitations using recycled components. Lisa, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "So, does this mean Tommy's getting a new grandmother and a mom?" The adults fell silent, but Tommy smiled. He wrote quickly in his notebook, "More people to help me sneak extra workshop." At time, the tension broke. Catherine laughed, a sound surprisingly similar to Tommy's silent chuckle. "I think," she said, signing as she spoke, "it means we're all going to learn how to be a very unique kind of family." She reached into her purse and pulled out another business card, offering it to Marcus. This one was different, simpler, with just a phone number. "This is my personal line," she explained. "Not for business, for—" she gestured around the workshop, "for family things." Tommy picked up both cards, studying them side by side. Then he carefully pinned them to the workshop's bulletin board, right next to his original drawing of sound waves and the prototype's first successful test results. "Speaking of family things," Catherine continued, her corporate armor softening further, "would it be okay if I stayed in town for a few days? There's a lot to figure out, both with the device and—" She looked at Tommy hopefully. "Other things?" Tommy's response was to pull up an extra stool to his workbench and pat it invitingly. "I think," Mrs. Wu said with a slight smile, "that's Tommy's way of saying you're welcome to stay. Though you might want to change out of that silk blouse first, the workshop can be a bit hands-on." Catherine looked down at her expensive outfit, then at the grease-stained workbench where her son spent his happiest hours. Without hesitation, she rolled up her sleeves. "I think it's time," she said. "I learned to get my hands dirty." The partnership contract lay unopened on Marcus's workbench, its thick paper and embossed Walsh Technologies logo, a stark reminder of how much had changed in just a few days. Catherine had presented it with characteristic precision, 50 pages, of legal language, profit-sharing agreements and development timelines. "Take your time," she'd said. "Read it carefully. This could change everything." Now, in the quiet of his workshop, Marcus finally broke the seal. The terms were more than generous. A fully equipped research lab, a development team at his disposal, and enough funding to turn his prototype into a properly manufactured device. But it was the last section that made his hands tremble slightly. "Patent rights will be shared," the document stated, "with explicit provisions for maintaining affordability and accessibility." Lisa found him still reading an hour later. "Dad, Tommy's asking if we're still having workshop time today." Marcus looked up to see Tommy hovering in the doorway, Catherine standing behind him. She'd traded her business suits for jeans and a casual blouse, though she still carried herself with CEO authority. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "we need to have a family meeting first, all of us." They gathered around the workbench, Marcus, Lisa, Tommy, Catherine, and Mrs. Wu. The contract sat in the center like a bridge between their worlds. "The technical aspects are straightforward," Catherine explained, signing as she spoke. "We want to develop the device properly, run clinical trials, make it available to everyone who needs it. But," she paused, looking at Tommy, "there's more than just business involved here." Tommy picked up the contract, flipping through pages until he found what he was looking for. He pointed to a paragraph about relocating to Walsh Technologies' main research facility. "That's optional," Catherine said quickly. "We could set up a lab here, keep you close to home, to your grandmother, to school. But you'd be traveling back and forth," Marcus noted, reading between the lines, "trying to balance running your company and being here." Catherine's corporate mask slipped slightly. "I've missed so much already. I don't want to miss any more, but I also can't abandon the company. We help millions of people with our medical devices." Tommy wrote something in his notebook and showed it to his grandmother. "He wants to know if he could spend summers at the research facility, Mrs. Wu translated. Work with the engineers, learn more about making devices like his. Lisa perked up. Could I come too? I mean, if Dad takes the job. Marcus studied the contract again. Beyond the legal language and corporate terminology, he saw what Catherine was really offering. Not just a business partnership, but a chance to heal a fractured family while helping others. There's something else, Catherine said. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a modified version of the prototype, sleeker and more refined. Our engineers worked through the night to address the interference issues, Tommy documented. Would you like to test it? Tommy's eyes lit up. He reached for the device, but then hesitated, looking at Marcus for approval. It's your decision, Marcus said, making sure Tommy could see his lips clearly. This is all about helping you and others like you. Tommy took the refined prototype, examining it with an engineer's eye, a trait he seemed to have inherited from both Marcus and Catherine. He pointed to several modifications, nodding appreciatively. We kept the core of your design, Catherine told Marcus. Just refined the housing and shielding. Tommy's notes about the interference were invaluable. Mrs. Wu watched the exchange, with mixed emotions playing across her face. All these years, she said softly, I thought I was protecting him. But maybe he needed all of you. The engineer who could help him hear, the sister who could make him laugh, and the mother who never stopped trying to find a way. Catherine reached for the contract. We don't have to decide everything now. We can take it step by step, see what works best for everyone. Tommy had finished examining the refined prototype. He wrote 2 words in his notebook. Sign it. Marcus looked at Lisa, who nodded eagerly, then at Mrs. Wu, who gave a small smile of approval. Finally, he looked at Catherine, seeing not just the powerful CEO, but a mother trying to bridge years of absence with action. He picked up his pen. One condition, he said. We keep the workshop. Sometimes the best innovations happen in unexpected places. Catherine smiled, a genuine warmth, replacing her business expression. I think we can arrange that. The corporate prototype looked nothing like Marcus's original device. Sleek, streamlined, and professionally manufactured, it sat in its pristine display case at Walsh Technologies' R&D lab like a piece of modern art. But something wasn't right. The neural processing is delayed by 2.3 milliseconds, Marcus explained, pointing to the data scrolling across his monitor. It doesn't sound like much, but it means the sound processing isn't natural, Tommy wrote on his tablet. Frustration, evident in his quick strokes. He'd been testing the corporate version all morning, and his detailed notes showed a clear preference for his original device. The development team shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. These weekly review meetings had become increasingly tense, as the gap between garage innovation and corporate production became apparent. We've optimized the power consumption and reduced the form factor by 60%, the lead engineer argued, pulling up his own charts. The delay is within acceptable parameters for medical devices. Acceptable parameters? Marcus fought to keep his voice level. We're not building a standard hearing aid. The whole point of the neural network is to create natural, real-time sound processing. Catherine, observing from the corner, stepped forward. Show me the difference, Tommy. Tommy removed the corporate prototype and put on his original device. He walked around the lab, pointing to different sound sources, computer fans, air conditioning, voices. Then he switched to the new version and repeated the process, his face showing clear disappointment. The original one feels alive, he wrote. This one feels mechanical, the lead engineer sighed. Mr. Chen, we understand your attachment to the original design, but we can't mass-produce devices with salvaged parts and hand-soldered connections. We need standardization, reliability, consistent performance. Then we find a way to do both, Marcus insisted. He pulled out his notebook, still filled with hand-drawn sketches and calculations, despite the high-tech lab surrounding them. The neural network chip we're using isn't the problem. It's how we're implementing it. Lisa, who had been quietly doing homework in the corner during her after-school visit to the lab, looked up. Dad, Remember how you taught the original device to learn from Tommy specifically? The corporate one is trying to be one size fits all. Catherine's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She's right. We're approaching this like a traditional medical device, standardized programming, predetermined parameters. But what made Marcus's original design revolutionary was its ability to adapt to individual users. The development team exchanged glances. Custom programming for each device would increase production costs significantly, someone pointed out. But what if we didn't program them? Lisa asked, warming to her idea. What if we taught them to program themselves, like how Tommy's device learned his specific needs? Marcus was already sketching. A learning phase? Yes, instead of pre-programming. Responses? We give each device a training period with its user. The neural network adapts organically, creating a personalized sound profile. Tommy was nodding enthusiastically. He typed rapidly. Like how I had to teach my device which sounds were important and which ones were just noise. The lead engineer looked skeptical. The FDA has never approved a self-learning medical device of this complexity. The validation process alone would be unprecedented. Then we set the precedent, Catherine said firmly. This isn't just about manufacturing a product. It's about revolutionizing how we approach assistive technology. She turned to the team. I want proposals for implementing a learning phase while maintaining manufacturing consistency. And I want them by the end of the week. As the team filed out, Tommy ran another comparison test between the two devices. His expression said everything. The corporate prototype, for all its polish, still couldn't match the intuitive performance of Marcus's garage-built original. We'll get there, Marcus assured him, watching the boy's disappointed face. Sometimes progress means taking a step back to move forward. Catherine stayed behind after the others left, examining the two devices side by side. You know what? The real difference is, she said softly, your version was built with love for one specific boy who needed help. We're trying to replicate that on an industrial scale. Maybe that's the secret, Marcus mused. Not trying to replicate it exactly, but finding a way to let each device develop its own relationship with its user. Tommy tapped his tablet too. Get their attention. Can I help with the new design? I know what makes the original special. Catherine smiled, her CEO persona softening into something more maternal. I think that's exactly what this project needs, the perspective of someone who truly understands both the technology and the experience. The corporate prototype continued to glow in its display case, beautiful but flawed. Next to it, Tommy's original device might have looked crude, but its performance spoke for itself. Somewhere between these two extremes lay the solution they were seeking, a bridge between innovation and implementation, between personal touch and mass production. Catherine found the photograph while helping Mrs. Wu organize Tommy's childhood files. It was tucked inside an old medical report, a faded picture of herself holding newborn Tommy, both of them bathed in harsh hospital light. She was younger then, dressed in a graduate student's casual clothes rather than CEO suits. Her face a mixture of joy and fear. You used to sing to him, Mrs. Wu said softly, pausing in her filing, even after the doctors confirmed his deafness. You said maybe he could feel the vibrations of your voice, even if he couldn't hear the melody. Catherine traced the photograph's edge with a manicured finger. I was so sure I could fix everything with technology. When nothing worked, she took a shaky breath. I thought giving him to you and focusing on research was the best solution. I never imagined the answer would come from a handyman's workshop. They were interrupted by sounds from the backyard. Laughter, both voiced and silent. Through the window, they could see Tommy and Lisa at the picnic table, surrounded by circuit boards and tablets. Marcus sat with them, teaching them both sign language while they worked on the next prototype iteration. He's good with them, Catherine observed, watching Marcus patiently correct Lisa's signing while Tommy demonstrated a more efficient hand movement. He understands what Tommy needs, Mrs. Wu agreed. Not just the technology, but the connection, the belonging. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Something money can't buy. Catherine set down the photograph. I'm not trying to buy his love. I want to make up for lost time. Then don't waste more of it standing in here with old pictures. Mrs. Wu gently pushed her toward the door. Go, learn with them. Outside, Tommy was explaining something about frequency modulation, his hands flying in excitement. When he saw Catherine, he waved her over, pointing to an empty spot at the table. We're teaching Dad proper technical signs, Lisa explained, as Catherine sat down. Tommy knows all sorts of engineering terms we never learned in basic sign language class. Marcus looked up from his notebook where he'd been sketching a new circuit design. It's fascinating how sign language evolves to accommodate technical concepts. Tommy's been teaching us signs specific to audio engineering. Tommy demonstrated, combining the signs for sound and shape to describe wave patterns. Catherine found herself mimicking the gesture, muscle memory from years of signing practice coming back. That's not quite right, Tommy wrote on his tablet, then stood behind her to guide her hands through the correct movement. It was the first time he'd initiated physical contact with her, and Catherine had to blink back sudden tears. Lisa, perceptive as always, created a distraction by spilling her juice. While Marcus cleaned up the mess, she whispered to Catherine, he likes teaching people. It makes him feel like the expert instead of the one who needs help. The afternoon stretched into evening, their work punctuated by impromptu sign language, lessons and technical discussions. Mrs. Wu brought out snacks, then dinner, smiling at how the picnic table had transformed into a combination classroom and engineering lab. As the sun set, Tommy pulled out the photograph Catherine had found earlier. He studied it for a long moment, then wrote, "Did you really sing to me?" Catherine nodded. "Every day. Usually old Chinese lullabies my mother taught me." Tommy considered. This then wrote again, "Could you teach them to me, not to hear but to feel, like you did then?" Catherine's composure cracked. "Yes," she signed, her hands trembling slightly. "I remember every one." Marcus and Lisa began packing up the electronics, giving mother and son some privacy. Tommy sat closer to Catherine, placing his hand gently on her throat as she began to sing softly. Through his device, he could hear the melody, and through his touch, he could feel the vibrations, past and present, connecting in a way no technology could replicate. Later, as they cleaned up the picnic table, Marcus found Tommy's tablet with one last message written on it. "My family is weird now. I like it." Lisa, reading over his shoulder, grinned. "Weird is good. Weird made the device that helps you hear." Tommy nodded enthusiastically, then pointed to the photograph still sitting on the table. With careful deliberation, he propped it against his original device, a bridge between what was lost and what had been found. The failed test results painted a grim picture. After weeks of development, the latest batch of corporate prototypes had catastrophically malfunctioned during clinical trials. The data scrolling across the lab's monitors showed what Marcus had feared. The neural network wasn't adapting properly in the mass-produced versions. Every single unit failed. Catherine paced the conference room, her CEO persona firmly in place as she addressed the development team. "How did we miss this? In preliminary testing," the lead engineer pointed to a complex graph. "The learning algorithm becomes unstable after approximately 48 hours of use. We thought we had solved this with the latest firmware update. But you were wrong," Marcus interrupted, his voice tight with frustration. He'd warned them about rushing the production process, about trying to standardize something that needed to be inherently adaptable. Tommy sat at the conference table, methodically documenting the differences between his original device and the failed prototypes. His face showed deep concentration as he typed out his observations on his tablet. "The FDA review board is meeting next week," Catherine continued. "These results could set us back months, maybe years." She paused, looking at Tommy. "What have you found?" Tommy held up his tablet. The new ones think too much. They try to predict instead of learn. Original one learns from me, not from programming. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly alert. Show me your comparison notes. Tommy's documentation was meticulous. Where the original device had learned to filter sounds based on his reactions and preferences, the corporate versions were trying to anticipate needs based on pre-programmed parameters. The neural network wasn't failing, it was being strangled by its own programming. We overcomplicated it, Marcus realized, spreading Tommy's notes across the table. Look here, every time we added another layer of predictive algorithms, we moved further from what made the original work. The development team gathered around Tommy's analysis. Lines of complex technical data were interspersed with simple human observations. Sound feels artificial. Too much processing. Tries to think for me instead of with me. Catherine studied the notes carefully. So we need to strip it back down, remove the corporate improvements. Not remove, simplify. Marcus was already sketching in his notebook. Tommy's right. We turned an adaptive learning system into a predictive one. We need to let each device learn from its user, not try to guess what every user might need. One of the younger engineers raised his hand tentatively. But what about FDA requirements? They expect consistent, predictable performance across all units. Then we document the learning process itself. Lisa chimed in from her homework corner. Show them it's not random, it's personalized medicine. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, typing quickly. Like how doctors adjust medicine doses for different people. Device adjusts sound for different ears. The lab grew quiet as the implications sank in. They'd been so focused on mass production and standardization that they'd lost sight of what made the original device revolutionary. Its ability to create a unique relationship with each user. How long to reprogram the neural network? Catherine asked the development team. To strip out the predictive algorithms and rebuild the learning framework. The lead engineer calculated quickly. 3 weeks minimum. You have 1 week, Catherine said firmly. After that, we'll need time for testing before the FDA review. She turned to Tommy. Will you help? We need your experience with the original device. Tommy's response was to pull up a chair at the engineer's workstation, fingers already flying over the keyboard as he accessed the device's code. Marcus watched his son, for that's what Tommy had become to him now, take charge of the situation. The boy who had once watched silently through a workshop window was now leading a team of corporate engineers, teaching them about the human side of their technology. Lisa appeared at his elbow. Dad, is everything going to be okay? Marcus looked around the lab, at Tommy's confident problem-solving, at Catherine's proud smile, at the engineers learning from a child's wisdom. Yeah, circuit board. Sometimes you need things to go wrong to remember what made them right in the first place. The failed test results still glowed on the monitors, but they seemed less daunting now. Unlike the sleek corporate prototypes gathering dust in their display cases, Tommy's original device sat on his desk, faithfully translating the world into sound, a constant reminder that the best technology was the kind that learned and grew, with its user, forming a partnership rather than just performing a function. 1 week, Catherine repeated, but her voice had softened. Let's bring back the magic that started in that workshop. Marcus's original notes lay spread across the lab table, their hand-drawn diagrams and coffee-stained calculations a sharp contrast to the sleek corporate environment. Tommy had insisted on bringing them from the workshop, along with the first working prototype. To remember, he'd written on his tablet, how it felt when it was new. The development team huddled around the papers, trying to decipher Marcus's shorthand and the evolving thought process that had led to success. Catherine stood back, watching as Tommy guided them through each iteration of the design. See here, Tommy typed, pointing to a particularly messy page. Dad didn't try to solve everything at once. He let the device learn with me. The lead engineer frowned at the notes. But these calculations, they're so basic. We've developed much more sophisticated algorithms. Sometimes Marcus said quietly. Sophisticated isn't what you need. Look at how the neural network was implemented originally. He pulled out a diagram showing the simple but elegant learning pathways. We didn't tell it what to learn. We gave it the tools to figure that out for itself. Lisa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. It's like when Tommy was teaching me sign language. He didn't give me a huge list of rules. He showed me the basics and let me practice, correcting me when I made mistakes. Catherine's eyes lit up. That's it. We've been trying to program every possible scenario into the device. Instead, we should be teaching it how to learn from each user. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, pulling up the original device's code on his screen. The programming was remarkably streamlined compared to the corporate version, where they had added layers of predictive algorithms and error-checking routines. The original code focused on one thing: listening and adapting to its user. Look at this feedback loop, one of the younger engineers pointed out. It's so elegant. The device isn't just processing sound, it's learning from how the user responds to different frequencies and environments. Marcus smiled, remembering those late nights in his workshop. We didn't have the resources to make it complicated. We had to make it work with what we had. Tommy was already typing, "Can we make the new ones more like this? Simple but smart?" The team began stripping away the corporate additions, layer by layer. Every time they encountered a complex algorithm, they asked themselves, does this help the device learn from its user, or is it trying to think for them? Catherine watched the process with growing optimism. This is what I couldn't see before, she admitted to Marcus. When I was focused on finding a cure for Tommy's deafness, I thought more technology meant better results. But sometimes less is more, Marcus finished. Sometimes the best solution is giving people the tools to help themselves. As if to prove the point, Tommy had taken over one of the programming stations. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he implemented changes based on his own experience with the device. The engineers watched in amazement as this young boy, who had once been their test subject, now taught them about the human side of their technology. He's encoding his experience directly into the learning framework, the lead engineer observed. This is brilliant. Lisa peered over Tommy's shoulder. He's teaching the device how to teach itself, she translated for the others, like how he learned to read lips and sign, step by step with lots of practice. By evening, they had a new prototype ready for testing. It looked more polished than Marcus's original, but maintained the same basic principles. The neural network was streamlined, focused on learning rather than predicting. Tommy was the first to test it. They all held their breath as he fitted the device and powered it on. His face remained neutral as the device went through its initialization sequence, but then a smile. He reached for his tablet. "It's listening," he wrote. "Not just to sounds, but to me, like the first one did." The team erupted in celebration, but Marcus noticed something more significant. Catherine had tears in her eyes. "All those years," she whispered, "all that research, all that money." And what he really needed was a device that would learn with him, not just for him. Tommy removed the prototype and held it next to Marcus's original notes. Then he wrote something that would guide their way forward. "Sometimes you need to step back to see the whole picture, like when I'm learning a new sign. Start simple, then grow together." The lab screens still displayed complex diagnostic data, but now they were monitoring something different, not just how well the device processed sound, but how well it learned from its user. They had found their way back to what mattered, the human element that no amount of corporate sophistication could replace. Marcus's original notes lay spread across the lab table, their hand-drawn diagrams and coffee-stained calculations a sharp contrast to the sleek corporate environment. Tommy had insisted on bringing them from the workshop, along with the first working prototype. To remember, he'd written on his tablet, how it felt when it was new. The development team huddled around the papers, trying to decipher Marcus's shorthand and the evolving thought process that had led to success. Catherine stood back, watching as Tommy guided them through each iteration of the design. "See here," Tommy typed, pointing to a particularly messy page. "Dad didn't try to solve everything at once. He let the device learn with me." The lead engineer frowned at the notes. "But these calculations, they're so basic. We've developed much more sophisticated algorithms." "Sometimes," Marcus said quietly, "sophisticated isn't what you need. Look at how the neural network was implemented originally." He pulled out a diagram showing the simple but elegant learning pathways. "We didn't tell it what to learn. We gave it the tools to figure that out for itself." Lisa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "It's like when Tommy was teaching me sign language. He didn't give me a huge list of rules. He showed me the basics and let me practice, correcting me when I made mistakes." Catherine's eyes lit up. "That's it. We've been trying to program every possible scenario into the device. Instead, we should be teaching it how to learn from each user." Tommy nodded enthusiastically, pulling up the original device's code on his screen. The programming was remarkably streamlined compared to the corporate version, where they had added layers of predictive algorithms and error-checking routines. The original code focused on one thing: listening and adapting to its user. "Look at this feedback loop," one of the younger engineers pointed out. "It's so elegant. The device isn't just processing sound, it's learning from how the user responds to different frequencies and environments." Marcus smiled, remembering those late nights in his workshop. "We didn't have the resources to make it complicated. We had to make it work with what we had." Tommy was already typing, "Can we make the new ones more like this? Simple but smart?" The team began stripping away the corporate additions layer by layer. Every time they encountered a complex algorithm, they asked themselves, "Does this help the device learn from its user, or is it trying to think for them?" Catherine watched the process with growing optimism. "This is what I couldn't see before," she admitted to Marcus. "When I was focused on finding a cure for Tommy's deafness, I thought more technology meant better results. But sometimes less is more," Marcus finished. "Sometimes the best solution is giving people the tools to help themselves." As if to prove the point, Tommy had taken over one of the programming stations. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he implemented changes based on his own experience with the device. The engineers watched in amazement as this young boy, who had once been their test subject, now taught them about the human side of their technology. "He's encoding his experience directly into the learning framework," the lead engineer observed. This is brilliant." Lisa peered over Tommy's shoulder. "He's teaching the device how to teach itself." She translated for the others. "Like how he learned to read lips and sign, step by step, with lots of practice." By evening, they had a new prototype ready for testing. It looked more polished than Marcus's original, but maintained the same basic principles. The neural network was streamlined, focused on learning rather than predicting. Tommy was the first to test it. They all held their breath as he fitted the device and powered it on. His face remained neutral as the device went through its initialization sequence. But then, a smile. He reached for his tablet. "It's listening," he wrote, "not just to sounds, but to me, like the first one did." The team erupted in celebration, but Marcus noticed something more significant. Catherine had tears in her eyes. "All those years," she whispered, "all that research, all that money. And what he really needed was a device that would learn with him, not just for him." Tommy removed the prototype and held it next to Marcus's original notes. Then he wrote something that would guide their way forward. "Sometimes you need to step back to see the whole picture. Like when I'm learning a new sign, start simple, then grow together." The lab's screens still displayed complex diagnostic data, but now they were monitoring something different. Not just how well the device processed sound, but how well it learned from its user. They had found their way back to what mattered, the human element that no amount of corporate sophistication could replace. The press release hit every major news outlet simultaneously. Walsh Technologies announces revolutionary adaptive hearing device. But it wasn't the corporate announcement that captured the world's attention. It was the story behind it. The viral video of Tommy's first moment of hearing had grown into something larger. A father's innovation, a mother's resources, and a family reunited through technology. The launch event transformed Walsh Technologies' main auditorium into a celebration of sound. Families from across the country had come, many with deaf children who would be among the first to receive the new device. Tommy, dressed in a suit that somehow combined corporate polish with teenage comfort, stood proudly beside the display model. The key innovation isn't just in the technology, Catherine explained to the gathered press, her CEO persona softened by genuine emotion. It's in how the device learns and grows with each user. Every unit becomes as unique as the person wearing it. Marcus, still somewhat uncomfortable in his new role as Chief Innovation Officer, demonstrated the technical aspects. "We are not trying to force everyone to hear the same way," he explained. "We're giving each person the tools to explore sound in their own way, at their own pace." Tommy had prepared his own presentation. Using his tablet connected to the main screen, he showed the journey from garage prototype to final product. His message was clear. This wasn't just about hearing. It was about understanding how different people experience sound. "What makes this device revolutionary," the FDA representative noted in her speech, "is its ability to adapt to individual users while maintaining consistent safety and reliability." Walsh Technologies has created a new category of personalized assistive technology. Lisa, watching from the front row with Mrs. Wu, couldn't help but smile at how her father kept tugging at his tie while explaining the neural network architecture. He was still the same garage inventor at heart, most comfortable with a soldering iron in his hand. But when he demonstrated how the device learned from each user, his passion shone through any corporate nervousness. The most powerful moment came during the Q&A session. A young girl, no more than 6, raised her hand. Through her interpreter, she asked Tommy, "Will it help me hear my mommy's songs?" Tommy removed his device and walked over to her. Using sign language that the whole audience could see on the big screen, he explained how the device had helped him hear his mother's voice for the first time. Then he added, "But the best part is teaching it how you want to hear. It becomes your friend in discovering sound." The first production units were ready for distribution. Rather than a standard retail launch, Walsh Technologies had worked with audiology centers nationwide to ensure proper training and support. Tommy had insisted on creating video guides for new users, sharing his experience and tips for working with the device. "This isn't just a product launch," Catherine told a reporter. "It's the beginning of a new approach to assistive technology. Every device learns and improves through its user's experience, and we learn from every device." The presentation screens showed live demonstrations, children working with audiologists to calibrate their devices, the neural networks adapting in real time to each user's responses. But the most compelling display was Tommy, moving confidently through the crowd, alternating between sign language and speech, helping other kids understand how the device could work for them. "Remember," he typed on his tablet displayed on the main screen, "the device doesn't fix everything. It helps you explore sound your way. Sometimes that means turning it off and just being who you are." Marcus found himself standing next to Catherine as they watched Tommy demonstrate the device's features to an enthusiastic group of children and parents. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked quietly. "When you first saw that viral video?" Catherine shook her head. "I imagined finding a way to help him hear. I never imagined he would help us understand hearing in a whole new way." The press release was being shared worldwide now, but it was the personal stories that truly spread the message. Parents posted videos of their children's first experiences with the device. Audiologists shared cases of users developing their own unique relationships with the technology. The garage innovation that had helped one boy hear had grown into something that would change countless lives. Tommy's final demonstration of the day was simple but profound. He showed how each device developed its own pattern of adaptation, as unique as a fingerprint. Because, he typed for the audience, everyone's journey with sound is different. And that's exactly how it should be. The thank you letters began arriving a month after the launch. Hundreds of them from all over the world, each telling a unique story of discovery and connection. They papered the walls of Marcus's new office at Walsh Technologies, handwritten. Notes, crayon drawings, photographs of smiling children with their devices. "Dear Mr. Chen and Ms. Walsh," one letter read, "yesterday I heard my baby sister laugh for the first time. I didn't know sounds could feel like sunshine." Tommy spent hours after school reading the letters, translating many of them into sign language for the growing community of users who shared their experiences online. Each story reinforced what they discovered, that hearing wasn't just about sound, it was about connection. "Look at this one," Lisa said, holding up a letter decorated with stickers. "She says she likes turning the device off sometimes, just like Tommy does, because now it's her choice when to be in the silent world, or the sound world." Catherine joined them, setting down her laptop. The corporate emails could wait. These messages from families were more important. "Remember when we thought success meant perfect hearing?" she mused, watching Tommy sort through the letters. "Success is giving people choices," Marcus replied, thinking back to those first workshop sessions, letting them find their own way to connect with sound. Tommy waved to get their attention, then held up his tablet. "Can we have a workshop day, like before? I want to try something new with the learning algorithm." The request surprised them. Despite all their success, Tommy still loved tinkering with the original prototype in Marcus's workshop. Some of their best innovations had come from these informal sessions, where garage creativity met corporate resources. That weekend, they gathered in the familiar space. Mrs. Wu brought snacks, just like before. The workshop still smelled of solder and coffee, though the tools were newer now, the test equipment more sophisticated. "What's on your mind, buddy?" Marcus asked as Tommy set up his testing station. Tommy typed quickly, "The letters made me think. Everyone experiences sound differently. What if we could share those experiences?" He demonstrated his idea, showing how users could share their customized sound profiles, not to copy them, but to understand different ways of hearing. A library of experiences, each one personal but valuable to others on similar journeys. It's like, Lisa searched for the right words, like sharing stories, but with sound patterns. "Exactly," Catherine said, catching Tommy's vision. "Not to replace personal learning, but to show there are many ways to hear, many ways to connect." As they worked, Marcus noticed how naturally they had all fallen into their roles. Lisa debugging code, Catherine coordinating with the development team remotely, Mrs. Wu documenting everything in her precise way, and Tommy confidently moving between the technical and human aspects of their work. A notification popped up on Tommy's tablet. A video call from a user in Australia. She was a teenage musician who had helped test the device's music appreciation features. Tommy answered, and soon they were all watching as she demonstrated how she used the device to feel rhythm in new ways. That's what makes this special, Marcus realized. It's not just the technology anymore. It's the community that's grown around it. Catherine nodded, watching Tommy sign excitedly with the Australian girl. "We're not just helping people here," she said softly. "We're helping them belong." The letters continued to arrive, each one finding its place on the workshop walls alongside the technical diagrams and family photos. They were more than thank you notes now. They were proof that their family's journey had helped others find their own paths. Tommy's latest idea would take months to implement properly, but no one doubted it would happen. The garage workshop that had started it all was still where their best ideas were born, where corporate resources met family innovation. Full circle, Mrs. Wu said later as they cleaned up the workshop, from watching through the fence to helping others break down walls. Tommy picked up one of the letters, then wrote something that captured their entire journey. Sometimes the best way to fix something is to realize it was never broken, just waiting for the right people to understand it. The workshop lights dimmed, but the letters glowed with promise, each one a reminder that their family's story had become part of something larger, a movement that celebrated the many ways people could connect through sound and silence, through technology and touch, through understanding and love. The foundation logo captured everything their journey represented, a simple sound wave transforming into a bridge connecting two sides of a circle. It was Tommy who had sketched the initial design, combining the technical and human elements of their story into a single powerful image. The Chen Foundation for Adaptive Technology launched on the same day as Marcus and Catherine's wedding, a small ceremony in Marcus's workshop where it had all begun. Tommy stood proud as best man, delivering his speech both in sign language and spoken word, his device allowing him to share his joy in both of his worlds. "My family started with a fence between us," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "But sometimes the biggest barriers can become the strongest bridges. My dad taught me that anything broken can be fixed if you understand it first. My mom showed me that resources mean nothing without heart behind them, and my grandmother—" He smiled at Mrs. Wu, who was crying openly now. "She taught me that love speaks in many languages, not all of them needing sound." Lisa, as maid of honor, couldn't resist adding her own technical observation. "And sometimes the best families are built like the best devices, adaptable, supportive, and willing to learn from each other." The Foundation's mission was simple: to ensure that adaptive technology reached those who needed it most. The profits from the device's success funded research into other innovations, all following the same principle: technology that learned with its users, not for them. Tommy had already started mentoring younger children, showing them how to make the device part of their journey rather than just a solution to a problem. His workshop sessions became so popular that Walsh Technologies set up a special lab just for user innovation, where people could share their experiences and help improve the technology. As the wedding celebration wound down, Marcus found Tommy in the workshop, tinkering with what looked like a new prototype. "Another idea?" Marcus asked, sitting beside his son. Tommy nodded, typing on his tablet. "The Foundation isn't just about hearing, it's about understanding. I want to help people bridge other gaps too." Catherine joined them, having swapped her wedding heels for more workshop-appropriate shoes. "That's what family does," she said, signing as she spoke. "We build bridges together." Mrs. Wu appeared in the doorway, carrying Tommy's original drawing of sound waves, the one that had started their journey. She'd had it framed, the simple childish sketch, now a testament to how hope, love, and determination could change lives. The new family gathered around the workbench where it had all begun. Above them, the Foundation's logo caught the evening light, casting a bridge of shadows across the wall. Another fence had been transformed into a connection, another silence into understanding, another ending into a new beginning.